Welcome to Dicejunkies, and this is Xenodamus. I'm here with
Q.
and we're going to do a book review on Mordenkaisen's Tome of Foes, the latest 5th ed book to come out as of recording this. It came out on the 18th of May, and let's jump into it, man. Right off the top, what did you feel about this book?
Very awesome. I mean, it did surprise me on a couple of the things he did, but from the first page, for us old school fans of Mordenkainen and Big B, there's reference to all of them. There's even a little bit of drama that kind of plays on those personalities that the novel readers will remember. It really felt like coming back home to read that short section and go like, yeah, this is Court and Big B and Mordenkainen.
You started reading some of the preface, and I was like, man, I skipped the preface. I was like, man, I think I skipped part of the best part.
Well, for somebody who remembers
look,
those characters, for me, big fan of Mordenkainen, man. And only I hate is that I didn't see a shout out to Tensor that often. I was like, oh man, they got most of them, but we didn't see Tensor.
Yeah.
But it's that little section there is awesome.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I mean, it comes off strong with a great preface, and then jumping into chapter 1, you have the Blood War.
They started strong, man. They went straight
for it. Your devils and demons, and they do a really good job of explaining that war, and really the two sides, and how they should go.
I'm gonna say this, Planescapers. I have not since Planescape seen the Blood War and the Gith and some of the other races detailed with this amount of excellent writing and details that I was like, wow, this reminds me of the level that you used to get out of the Planescape books for really hammering out what's going on with these characters.
Yeah. And so far, like I said, if you're looking at picking this book up, though, go to your local comic shop. It's there now. You can't get it on Amazon for like another 2 weeks or so. And support local, man. Support local. We support ours, Vans, Comic Cards and Games. Awesome shop here local in Jackson, Mississippi, where we film. And I'm always excited to be able to put my hands on the book, make sure it's a good copy before we take it home, and support our local shop. So this Blood War, I mean, yeah, you got the different points of views. Like they give it into the devilish point of view, they give it into the demon point of view. They talk about the Lords of the Nine Hells, which go into really good detail about those deities.
That short section about the trial of Asmodeus is some of the best reading, man. That was awesome.
But, it's written a lot like Volo's Guide was written, with that storytelling, story-driven.
I don't know. To me, it has the Mordenkainen tone because it's taken very seriously. Like you said.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not saying like the tone, but the style of writing, because, Volo's was written in Volo's tone. You have the notes throughout it that sort of give it sort of set the tone.
It has character. And it has a lot of character. And like you said, it's actually good reading. It's actually good reading. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was sitting there and I was reading and he's like, man, you need to go ahead and finish that. I was like, shut up, man, I'm enjoying this. I'm like reading sections. I'm talking to him about it. It's like, oh, did you read this part? And he's like, I skimmed it.
Oh, no, this was a good part, talking about the different cults. Good write-up
with
on
boons.
Multiple cults and the boons and all that. But, I mean, just sort of gives you a lot more role-playing material. I mean, this is, so far, I'd say it's DM heavy.
The whole book, I guess. And on the next thing, at the end of the section, they go into a lot of new tiefling options.
Well, and this is where some of the player stuff comes in, is with the tiefling, because you have tiefling sub races, so you really get to flesh out being a tiefling. Like we have several, the Azamar sub races, I think in Volos and stuff. Or maybe Xanathars, I can't remember which one put out those sub-races, but the Tieflings get a little bit of a work on them here.
But a lot of flexibility on the stat adjustments and the spells they get. Themed toward the Lords of the Nine, themed toward some of the Demon Lords. Mm-hmm. So they even have that in there where they theme them toward a particular.
They also do the charts, sort of like Volos did for some of their races, where you can sort of quick create ideals and behaviors, bonds and stuff.
If you don't like your background tables, you can use the tiefling background tables to make it more specific to your race over your art. Well,
it's also good for throwing together an NPC real quick because you don't necessarily go as much into the background when you're creating those bonds and personalities and stuff, where you can sort of skip some of that when making NPCs, especially if they're only going to be used handful of times.
Yeah. I think the next section is the elves.
The Prince of the Abyss, Lords and their Thralls, the Demigorgon.
They got full cult building tools and everything for antagonists. I mean, this is the Book of Foes. They tell you how to build them.
But yeah, and then you jump in. Let's see, you got a demon customization table. But yeah, the next chapter, elves. Now, the elves, we actually talked a little bit about these before because of a little bit of retconning that went on here with...
They rewrite the history of the Elven Pantheon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying whether it's bad or good because you know what? Individual tastes. But they do rewrite
Well, and I think when we talked about it before, our friend... I can't remember who it was on the live stream, but somebody commented, these... I know it was on our YouTube where Blurred Without Fear had commented, things change, and he was okay with it, where I do like my old school stuff, so I don't like change as much when it comes to my D&D, but I do understand the idea of, hey, things change.
Well, it comes from the fact, too, that we're different than a lot of gamers in that we are multi-gamers. We play a lot of different systems. So for us, we come to D&D to come back home to that D&D we knew. When we want to do something different, we actually play a whole new system. But other people don't, so I can understand why they're like, we don't mind some change. Whereas us, we're like, well, if I wanted to have a different Pantheon, I'd go to like Pathfinder or Hackmaster. You go to a different setting. So it's more our style of play that you go to D&D because you want to go to the Forgotten Realms and the Dragonlance and the Dark Sun and the settings you remember. You go to the other ones when you want something different. So we'll admit that like they're not big on change. Being honest, we're not big on change. Well, not for D&D, man. I consider it the original, the OG, the original game.
And then you go into the Drow, which those were changed up some as well.
Oh boy, I mean it's pretty cool. Now here's the cool thing. There is an oddity I didn't expect, which they go a lot into the races, and they go into massive details on the races, cultures, and pantheons. I thought expected to be a little more plainer, but they really actually go into these deities into extreme detail, and it's kind of needed. It was very much one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Because you learn a lot more about all the gods.
Yeah, and this comes into more of the player side now towards the end of the elf section. You do have some new elf sub-races.
Well, they brought back the Eladrin.
With the Eladrin.
From 4th Ed.
They talk about the Sea Elves.
Mm-hmm.
What else do they have? The Shadari Kai.
Shadar Kai.
Yeah.
So which are now an elven subrace specifically, but they still are from the Shadowfell.
But yeah, so you have those extra sub-races and traits and stuff to do with them. And then Chapter 3, we get into another group, and that's the Dwarves and the Duger.
And they go into their pantheon in a big detail, especially the Duger. They get a massive fleshing out that I actually like.
Yeah, no, I was. It was cool to read the part with the dragons and how their interaction with dragons.
They go to the foes and they go into each color of the chromatic dragons and how they interact with them. The giants, they go into the racial rivalry in detail.
And just like they did with the elves, they go into the religion pretty in depth for dwarves.
The Duger get a great fleshing out too, which makes them they almost pull a Killmonger to where. Yeah, the Duger are evil, but they give a really good reason for why they are the way they are. That's good enough that I could play a Duger and feel like I'm not just playing a bad guy. They go into a great detail of why they are the way they are. I'm not going to spoil it for you because it actually was really good reading, but it's worth a read to just get a different perspective on why the Duger feel the way they are and act the way they are.
Yeah, and then for the players, they do break down the Duger as a playable character. I don't see any additional dwarf sub-races or anything.
Most of the sub-races are covered, though they do go into it for each setting, which one of the sub-races is an analog to each setting.
Yeah.
They'll tell you which stat you use for this dwarf out of the sub races in Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms. It's just they happen to already cover it pretty well.
Oh yeah.
The Duger are balanced pretty good too, unlike the 3.5 version. They actually kind of balanced them out a little better.
Yeah.
Old Duger players know the Dugers used to be a powerhouse race.
Yeah, and then more of that Volos type stuff of they have the charts here to create clans and for the dwarves and stuff like that. So you can do those quick setups and those quick builds so that you can have a clan enter into your game with a story, a background, traits, and all that really easily. Same thing with the Duger as well. They have the Duger quirks and all that.
Next up is the Gith.
Oh, now this section, this was a section I was glad to see, the Gith and their endless war.
Outside of Planescape books, you didn't used to get to know a lot about them, so I love this well-written history because they're one of to me, they're one of the most interesting astral races.
Yeah.
I really like them. Their culture and everything about them was really cool, and they go into it.
Well, and I've had the Gith come into several of my Forgotten Realms games. I mean, it's not unheard of. And
dude, I've put them in a whole other settings. I like them so much. They've popped up in other systems because they are an excellent, like, planar invader race for having an actual personality and a culture instead of just being like monsters.
Yeah,
like no, this is a culture.
I mean, back in the older D&D when magic items and stuff was a lot more prevalent and there was a lot more of them. I also have Gith who would planar travel merchants, stuff like that. Because I mean, it made a great race for that.
Oh no, they're cool, man, and they go into once again just amazing detail on the culture, their history. These write-ups here are like Volo's guides; they're just amazing sources that honestly, it's worth sitting down and just flipping through. I mean, they do a good job. I can't complain. And I mean, I was telling him, I said, man, they did such a good write-up. You could take one of these races or war conflicts and do a whole campaign. It just involves the Gith or just involves the Blood War.
Oh yeah, and like I said, these sections that are in this sort of teal color or whatever you want to call it,
footnotes.
Yeah, these footnotes are to me, just like in Volo's Guide, are some of the most wonderful parts of the book. Like I'm always amused by them. Like they give a good characteristic.
And Mordenkainen's questionable morality because of his balance is awesome because he'll say a comment that's kind of good, kind of evil. He does a good job of maintaining this tone, and you're just like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Now, once again, you have the Gith characters, so you can have playable Gith characters.
Dicejunkies are your races. Just so you know, they're about on the power level of Aasimar and Tieflings. They're awesome, but they do get some good abilities. So if you're one of those DMs that's kind of like you don't allow Aasimar and Gith and then Tiefling, they're about that tier of ability.
Yeah. And they also give the charts to easily create like personalities and stuff for them and groups. Then we jump into halflings and gnomes, and because they're sort of small people, they threw both of them into one section.
I'm a known hater on gnomes. I don't mind halflings as much, but gnomes. But they actually did a good write up. I actually found gnomes mildly less annoying when I was reading this section. I was like, you almost making me want to have gnome NPCs because you'll never see a gnome in my world. Well, okay, you might see a crazy alchemist. That's about the only role they ever get.
Yeah, same style though, sort of giving the background, not as much into the religious side on the gnomes and the
well, they're not as controlled by it.
Yeah.
The gnomes and halflings both tend to be chaotic, so you see it in the fact that their deities and them are a little bit more relaxed. Most of them are neutral good and chaotic good, and their relationship's a little bit less. Their whole culture is not shaped by the religion.
Yeah, I mean, the section's there for it. It's just not as big and it's not in depth, and it's because, like you said, it's not shaped as much by it.
Especially compared to the elves and the dwarves. Man, their pantheons are a huge part of their culture.
And then you have deep gnome traits, and I think that's the only additional
they kind of toned down the deep gnome. I kind of hate that. The deep gnomes used to be really mystical, but they kind of reined them in a bit, but still a good race.
Yeah. Now this is about a third, maybe a little more than a third of the book, this part that we've covered so far. So over the last half of the book is a bestiary. And
this is half Monsters Manual at least.
Yeah, it's definitely more than half Monsters Manual. But the monsters, I mean, where they do have some low CR monsters in here to sort of fill in a couple of gaps and to have monsters introduced for these new races and sub races and stuff. The majority of the monsters here are dealing with like devils and demons and blood war and stuff. So they're high tier
and
monsters.
Even the CR10s and 12s, I saw one that was terrifying. So, I mean, these are high. That one, there it is right there. That is a nightmare creature, man.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, definitely up your challenge for your players. And like he said, it goes up to CR23, and I think the highest I saw was a CR26, which I believe is Demogorgon.
Yeah.
He's either a 24 or 26, and it's like about the highest CR in the book.
I mean, there was several 20-plus CRs.
Oh, 21 and 22 are common. Go ahead.
But once again, I've commented on the Monsters Manual before. This Monsters Manual or this section with the Monsters Bestiary, love the art. They have Wizards has upped their art game for 5th ed so much.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, what's your final feel on the monster section? I'm gonna do mine as a pro and con. I have good things and bad things on it.
I mean, from what I saw, I didn't think that they were super unbalanced. The CRs, like, it went along with what I expected from the Monsters Manual. There were some where I was like, "Ooh, that has a special ability that is a little scary at that low of a CR."
That was the one I showed you, yeah.
But overall, I think it's a much needed addition for especially high level games, as well as giving a little more variety to the games. At lower level, and yeah, maybe a little more difficulty, on some of those encounters. But overall, the monster section, I'm really liking it. There's some of these monsters are throwbacks that really hit the nostalgic part in me. Like, I was like, oh,
Moloch.
man. Yeah, Moloch and
Orcus.
And I was just like, okay, that's awesome. I was at the comic shop thumbing through it, and I thumbed through the monster section. I just started cheesing over some of these.
Oh god, yeah. I remember the nightmare the Alep is, and it's still a friggin' nightmare.
But yeah, I was just sort of cheesing over some of the monsters in here, going, "Oh, I remember when,"
Everyone died.
Yeah. So what do you got, Q?
Oh, here's my pro con. I got basically, the thing is, the only real con I have, other than like 1 or 2 monsters. Well, I'll get to that. One con is that the only real con I had is I did not expect over half the book to be a monster manual. That's not like a bad thing, because one of my pros
I was gonna go into that a little on my final overall for the book.
Well, I was doing the monster section. Well, I have a pro to go with it though, because here's the thing: while over half the book is a monster manual, it is well written. There still are these footnotes. There is a lot of information. There's one footnote that talks about Vecna that was just awesome, that they remembered him and plugged in how he interacted with the monster. And so it's really well done. So as long as you know, which is why we do this, then there's no problem. It's not knowing. I did not expect over half the book to be that. I expected more planar information. I didn't get as much planar information, but then it's not the Book of Plane. It is the Book of Foes. So that was my bad. Big pros, like I said, incredibly well written, a lot of variety, a lot of enemies. The only other thing is, like, he is right. There's like one example of a monster is a high CR monster that has the ability to kidnap a player and teleport them away with it. And the way this system's built for one-on-one combat being a death sentence, that ability just seems so scary because there's no save. And I was just looking at it going like, oh my God, this is just an auto death. Because this is a CR12 creature that can grab a person and go, me and you are going to go over here. And I was like, oh, God, that balance does not seem like that seems like that's a death sentence for whoever gets it.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's the fear. I mean, there's a good way to put the fear of them in it, but other than that, amazingly well-written stories, unique. It doesn't feel like cookie cutter. Each one of these monsters has a lot of, this section's amazing. Jump back one. Elder Evils. I mean, we're talking about Cthulhian level monsters. Each one of these is friggin' awesome. And I mean, they had the Gru. They bring back the Gru. You know what I'm saying? So it's like this friggin', and the Worm Wizard. That section alone had so much style that I could do a whole campaign just about these Elder Evil incarnations that come in and try to corrupt people. So great section, great monster section. Honestly, I kind of prefer it. Like, it reminds me of Volo's, like you said. It's better than the Monster Manual. It's got more of that Volo's really well-written style with a lot of story.
Well, yeah,
added in.
the Master Manual didn't have as much of the story. Yeah, the bestiary with when having the creatures and stuff like that. But this definitely took that and really went with it. But overall book opinions, I think as a DM, grab the book for sure. As a player, I see you could probably borrow the book from your DM if you didn't have the cash. Don't force yourself to go buy it. It's worth a read though if you're anybody. Like
it's good reading. I mean,
other
than monster stats, there's not really any DM only material. Like it's just well written. The only thing I can see a DM telling you to do is don't read the monster section. That's about it.
But yeah, no, I think it's well worth it. It's a good book. If I had one thing really to say bad about this book or any other book, is where this is Mordekaisen's Tome of Foes. Yeah, you might not guess that there's sub races and all that stuff in there. And I wish that these books were a little more defined on the material that is within them.
I have noticed that. I wasn't gonna say anything, but as a player, I'm spoiled from the old D&D and Pathfinder's tendency to go, this is races, this is classes, and each one of the books, that's a great marketing strategy. Each one of the books has something for everybody, but it does mean when we were building characters for your campaign, like we had to pull out every book because there's literally like an archetype or a race variant in almost every single book.
Yeah.
So you're like, I have to look through every book to make sure I'm not missing anything. I mean, there's a new dwarf, there's several new elf archetypes, there's a new gnome. So if you play those races, you're going to want this book because they're pretty good.
I mean, as far as book of necessity, this one only goes before your setting books. This is the last of the actual in the list of Volo's Guide, Xanathar's Player's Handbook, all that. All that goes way before.
Xanathar's for players comes way before this and Volo's. Like, Xanathar's has more player material, archetypes, classes, and spells. Volo's and this book are about the same for more options. They're really more, like you said, DM books. Volo's and this fall under, to me, your DM's going to want these books. Players want Xanathar's, and they want Sword Coast. Though they reprint a lot of stuff from Sword Coast and Xanathar's, but they're going to want those two books.
Yeah. So, but like I said, good book, well written, great story. I'm glad I bought it. And we hope you enjoyed this review of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Be sure to support your local comic shop or hobby shop and buy local, man.
And subscribe to YouTube for us. Subscribe.
Subscribe to the Dicejunkies YouTube. You can also check us out every Sunday on Twitch. We do a live show at 3:30. So check that out as well. Take care.